Alright, so let's do this shit. Hello, welcome everybody. Today I'm going to be speaking on my top 10 Death Grips songs. These are just my own personal opinion, my favorites, the ones that I think the best, and just nothing else into it. And let's just get right to it. So at number 10 I have On My Sleeves, which is easily one of Death Grips' catchiest records in my opinion. I feel like at this point in the career they have redefined themselves so much, and at this point it's like what else they can do. And they decided to just throw a bunch of Bjork samples into half an album, and it fucking works. They came out with some of their catchiest songs. I love the repetitiveness in the beginning of the track, and then around the minute and a half mark, bass drop is just beautiful here. And actually this is a very important song because we're used to MC Ride just portraying characters with this music, but in here you actually get a look into his own personal life, and he's speaking on his mother passing away. And I feel like it's a really introspective track which shows MC Ride's range, not just that he can scream and just say a bunch of crazy shit all the time. And number 9 I have Guillotine, which at some point has to make it in your list. I mean, the bass in here is just banging, and I feel like a lot of credit is given to bass if it can just rattle your car, but I feel like even with how abrasive and hard hitting this track is, the bass is used in different levels very well. There's a certain type of grooviness to this bass despite of how abrasive and industrial and hard hitting it is. And throughout MC Ride's verses here, you kind of get a look into how Death Grips describes the process in which they make their own music, and just them speaking on it alone and the way MC Ride portrays his rhyme schemes just shows you of how much of a unique process it is in the making of Death Grips music. And it just shows how cutting edge and how alone they really stand when it comes to comparing themselves with other people that make music like them. It really feels like Death Grips is just on a league of its own, and I feel like MC Ride understands that here. So at number 8 I have No Love, which easily has some of the best drums I think Death Grips has ever used. I love the way MC Ride comes into the hook here. It's like a repeated hook, and the first time he comes in it is hard, and the second time he comes in it's even harder than that, and you get all this screaming aggressiveness throughout the hook, and then once it quickly switches to the verses he has this more monotone, more laid back flow, which kind of depicts again MC Ride can do so much more than just screaming, and this isn't even as monotone as he can actually get. He gets way more laid back in other tracks, and I feel like when it comes to the Death Grips tracks that just hit you, I feel like not a lot hit you as hard as this one does right here. So at number 7 I have Culture Shock, which kind of shows off Death Grips in their more electronic side of production. You hear this very off the wall type beat, and then you just have MC ride the whole track in a super calm flow. It almost feels like a robotic flow, but it really works with the theme of the track because he is speaking on the fact that he feels people are very manipulated by the media, but he's saying it in a way that seems kind of careless and kind of hopeless, in a sense that MC Ride doesn't really feel like the people that are listening to this, or even the people that aren't listening to this, have enough of a mental strength to realize that they're being manipulated in order to change their lives. And all of this just kind of adds to the eeriness, and the fact that they're making this in their very first record in ex-military, one of the most socially conscious tracks in my opinion. I feel like it's very impressive, and I feel like it definitely deserves a spot in the top 10. At number 6 on my list I have On GP, and if this was a list of the 10 most epic Death Grips tracks, this may very well be number 1. I love the samples that were chosen for Ride's vocals. They were perfect for him, and I just fucking love the second half of this track. Around the 3.5 minute mark, it just switches up, and MC Ride just reaches a whole new level of emotion. I feel he ends the track by saying, if it wasn't for them, I make that decision on GP, and on GP stands for general principle. And here he's basically saying that if it wasn't for my fans, if it wasn't for the people that love me, my family, the people that reassure me that what I do has some type of impact in life, I would kill myself without even second guessing. And that's just such an emotional and heartbreaking way to end a song, and even listening to it for the 100th time, it's still an emotional roller coaster. So at number 5 I have Inanimate Sensation, which when I first heard this song absolutely blew my mind. Like, this track should not work at all, but when you constantly keep listening to it, the beginning just feels like a beautiful ethereal build up to the rest of the track. MC Ride comes in with his usual hard grimy ass flow, and it's easily just one of the weirdest tracks you will ever hear. We already know that Death Grips is so cutting edge and so boundary pushing, and even when we get this feeling like this is so weird even for Death Grips, I just feel like it's such a defining cutting edge moment in their career here, and you will probably never hear another song like this. So many of Death Grips moments are so great and so memorable because you hear that song and you feel like you'll be lucky to hear another track like this ever again, and that's the same feeling I get here with Inanimate Sensation, like a lot of other Death Grips songs. So at number 4 I have The Fever, which is so beautifully sequenced into the Money Store album. You feel like after listening to Get Got, which is still a great song, it's a little bit more laid back. It doesn't feel as experimental as usual Death Grips songs, and then this track comes in as a second track, and then the build up to the track is just immense, and MC Ride comes in not just screaming but just spitting pretty fast for his type of flow, and it works very well, and it feels a little bit too distorted, a little little bit too overproduced, but it still somehow works, and it is such a banger track for Death Grips. And here you have MC Rod talking about the usual topics like just feeling insane, and here he really brings out the character that he's trying to portray throughout the whole Money Store album, just someone that has a bunch of fucked up experiences, and because of those terrible experiences that he's had, he feels like he has to enforce that back into the world because that's all he knows. And I feel like The Fever is such a perfect example and performance to show just how insane this character that MC Rod portrays can get. And at number 3 I have, which when it first came out is All I Would Play. And even though this track doesn't necessarily have a lot of subject matter into it, I don't necessarily think that a Death Grips song has to be fucking amazing with subject matter. I mean, I can literally just listen to this hook over and over and over again, and even though it is pretty simple, it is pretty straightforward, there are suicidal themes all over the Powers That Be album, and I feel like this track, even though it's a banger type of track, it kind of shows, and I might be looking too deep into this track, that even when he's performing, he still has these suicidal thoughts, as he says, I don't really care about real life. And even when he's in his happy moments, or in the moments that MC Rod's supposed to be happy, he still feels miserable and terrible inside. And even with that direction that the track could go in, it's still such a fun and just hard-hitting track that really just never gets old for me. And at number 2 I have System Blower, which has some of the best bass Death Grips has ever used. I just love the way it alternates throughout the track. I love the beat drops throughout this thing, and it has some of Death Grips' most odd samples throughout the track. It's really hard to even describe the instrumental with how much is going on, and at this point in the album, with it being the 8th track in the Money Store, you get this feeling that every single track is just super unpredictable, and I love that throughout the album experience. The fact that I have no idea what's gonna come next. I hate when albums just sound dry and just one note and just very repetitive. Every song just felt super different, and System Blower just stood out so fucking much through me. MC Rod's aggressiveness to the track is just so amazing. You don't necessarily need a ton of lyricism to make a great rap song. If you have charisma and a great delivery like MC Rod's showing here, those two things just worked out so well throughout this album, and System Blower just stood out so fucking much to me. And at number 1 I have I've Seen Footage, which may be a popular pick, but he rhymed Noited with footage. I mean, like I said before, I'll be lucky to hear another track like this, another vocal performance like this over another type of beat like this. When I first read into the lyrics, I actually read the lyrics before I even first heard the song, and when I read the lyrics, I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be some of the most dark sounding hip hop I've ever heard. And then I listened to the track, and the beat is actually very poppy, it's very groovy, it's very catchy, it's very nice on the ears. And on top of that, MC Rod is just spitting some of the darkest lyrics that he's ever said. And again, he's just, building up his character in the Money Store. I wanted to include a few more tracks from other albums, but I just wanted to keep this authentic. And I do think that the Money Store is the magnum opus of Death Grips. An album so good that I don't even know if they'll ever be able to repeat it. And I do think I've Seen Footage is one of the most defining rap songs this decade. And yeah, it is one of the best songs and one of the best albums that's dropped in the past 10 years. So it's easily my number 1 spot. I know people are going to disagree. Let me know what your list is. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll be with y'all very soon. Peace.